Captain Veltar stood on the bridge of the Silent Whisper, her four eyes focused on the main display screen. The ship floated in the darkness of space, its advanced sensors reaching out into the void like invisible fingers. Her crew worked quietly at their stations, the soft blue light from their controls casting strange shadows on their gray skin. "Captain," said Navigator Crix from his position near the star charts, "we have found something unusual." Veltar turned her long neck toward him. The Zephyrian Empire had been expanding for over 300 years. They had conquered 47 different worlds, each one falling easily to their superior technology and military might. Most species they encountered were still using primitive rockets or simple laser weapons. None had ever posed a real threat. "Show me," she commanded, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had never known defeat. The main screen flickered and changed. In the center appeared a large dark shape floating against the stars. It looked like a ship, but unlike anything in their databases. The vessel was massive, easily 3 times the size of their own reconnaissance ship. Its hull was dark gray, almost black, with what looked like battle damage across its surface. "Distance?" Veltar asked. "Approximately 2 million kilometers, Captain. The ship appears to be drifting. No energy signatures detected. No communications. It looks like a derelict." Science Officer Nexra looked up from her console. "Captain, the ship's design is completely unknown. It does not match any species in our records." Veltar smiled, showing her sharp teeth. "Another new species to add to the Empire. Another world to conquer. What is the ship's condition?" "Extensive damage to the outer hull. Multiple breaches sealed with some kind of metal patches. Scorch marks that suggest energy weapon impacts. The ship appears to have been in a significant battle. And the crew? Unknown, Captain. The ship is running on minimal power, if any. It could be completely dead." This was perfect. Veltar had been hoping for something more interesting than the usual primitive civilizations they encountered. A derelict warship would provide valuable intelligence about this new species' military capabilities. Then they could plan their invasion accordingly. "Take us closer," she ordered, "but maintain safe distance. Begin full-spectrum analysis." The Silent Whisper moved through space with perfect silence. The ship was designed for reconnaissance, with the most advanced scanning equipment in the Zephyrian fleet. They could analyze a ship's construction, weapons, technology, and crew capabilities from thousands of kilometers away. As they approached, more details became visible on the screen. The unknown vessel had a long, angular design with multiple weapon mounts along its hull. Strange symbols were painted on its side, but the translation computers could not identify the language. "Captain," Crix called out, "I am detecting artificial gravity aboard the vessel. The ship may not be completely dead after all." "Interesting. Any signs of active crew?" "Negative. The gravity could be from backup systems." Science Officer Nexra was already working at her station, directing the ship's powerful scanners toward the derelict. "Captain, beginning deep structural analysis." "This will take some time to complete. Proceed. I want to know everything about this ship. Its weapons, its defenses, its crew capacity. Everything." The bridge fell quiet except for the soft humming of the scanners and the occasional beep from various instruments. Veltar watched the unknown ship on the screen, her mind already planning how this discovery would advance her career. Finding a new species was always good for promotion, especially one that seemed to have advanced military technology. "Captain," Nexra said after several minutes, "preliminary scans show the ship is approximately 1,200 meters long. Hull thickness is unusual." "Explain." "The armor plating appears to be much thicker than necessary for a ship this size, at least 3 times thicker than our own military vessels. The construction suggests this species expects to take significant damage in combat." "What about weapons?" "I am detecting multiple weapon systems. Some appear to be energy-based, others use physical projectiles. The projectile weapons are surprisingly large." Veltar nodded. "Physical weapons were primitive, but they could still be dangerous if the species had good targeting systems. Continue the scan. I want details on propulsion, life support, crew quarters, everything." The hours passed slowly as the Silent Whisper's scanners worked their way through the unknown vessel. Layer by layer, they began to understand the ship's construction. It was clearly a military vessel, built for war, but there was something different about it. Something that made Veltar feel slightly uncomfortable, though she could not identify what. "Captain, I have the propulsion analysis. reported Engineer Thaxel from the back of the bridge. This species uses some kind of fusion drive system, but the design is unlike anything we have seen. The engine components are built to withstand enormous stress loads. How fast could it go? Based on the engine size and fuel capacity, I estimate this ship could travel at speeds approaching 20% of light speed. Without using hyperspace technology, that was impressive. Most species they encountered had barely achieved faster than light travel, and usually with very primitive systems. This species seemed to have developed incredibly efficient sublight engines. What about life support? Veltar asked. Nexra looked up from her console, a puzzled expression on her face. Captain, the life support systems are extensive. This ship could support a crew of over 10,000 individuals for several years without resupply. The air recycling systems are incredibly sophisticated. 10,000? That was a huge crew for a single ship. The Silent Whisper had only 80 crew members. Are you certain? The crew quarters are clearly designed for long-term occupation. There are recreational facilities, medical bays, even what appears to be manufacturing capabilities. This ship was built for extended missions far from home. Veltar felt the first stirring of unease. A species that built ships to carry 10,000 crew members was a species that thought in terms of large-scale military operations. This was not the primitive civilization she had hoped to find. Continue the scan, she ordered. Focus on the weapon systems. I want to know exactly what this ship can do. The scanning continued through the night cycle. As more data came in, the bridge crew grew quieter. The unknown ship was revealing capabilities that went far beyond what they had expected. Whatever species built this vessel, they were not primitive at all. Captain, Nexra called out near the end of her shift. I need to show you something. Veltar approached the science station. On the screen was a detailed diagram of one of the ship's weapon systems. This appears to be some kind of magnetic acceleration cannon. The projectile velocity would be approximately 15 kilometers per second. Veltar stared at the display. 15 kilometers per second was fast enough to punch through the armor of any Zephyrian ship. How many of these weapons does the ship carry? At least 12 that I can detect. And, Captain, these appear to be the smaller weapons. The unease in Veltar's stomach grew stronger. She was beginning to think that scanning this ship had been a mistake, but it was too late to stop now. They needed to understand what they were dealing with. Continue the scan, she said quietly. I want a complete analysis by morning. As the Silent Whisper continued its silent watch over the dark battleship, none of the Zephyrian crew realized they had just made the biggest mistake in their empire's history. The next morning brought revelations that made Captain Veltar wish she had never found the derelict ship. Science Officer Nexra had worked through the night, and her face showed the strain. Her normally gray skin had taken on a pale, almost white color. When she looked up at Veltar, her eyes held something the captain had never seen before in a Zephyrian. Fear. Report, Veltar commanded, though part of her no longer wanted to hear the answer. Captain, the deep scan results are disturbing. Nexra's voice shook slightly. This ship is not what we thought it was. Explain. Nexra activated the main display screen. A three-dimensional image of the unknown vessel appeared, rotating slowly. Different sections were highlighted in various colors, showing the ship's internal structure. The hull armor is not just thick, Captain. It is made from materials I cannot identify. The molecular structure suggests it was forged in extremely high temperatures, possibly in the core of a star. The armor could withstand direct hits from our heaviest weapons without significant damage. Veltar felt her stomach tighten. What about the weapons we detected? The magnetic acceleration cannons are more powerful than I first calculated. The projectiles they fire would have a velocity of 25 kilometers per second, not 15. Each projectile weighs approximately 1,000 kilograms. The captain did some quick mental calculations. A 1,000-kilogram projectile moving at 25 kilometers per second would carry more kinetic energy than their most powerful explosives. A single hit would completely destroy a Zephyrian cruiser. How many of these weapons? 18 confirmed, Captain. But those are just the medium-range weapons. Medium range. Nexra changed the display to show a cross-section of the ship's forward section. What Veltar saw made her blood run cold. Enormous chambers ran the length of the ship, each one containing machinery that defied understanding. These appear to be plasma cannons, Captain. The plasma is contained by magnetic fields and heated to temperatures exceeding 50 million degrees. Veltar stared at the display. 50 million degrees was hotter than the core of most stars. That is impossible. No ship could generate that much power. The ship's power systems are unlike anything in our databases. They appear to use controlled nuclear fusion reactions. But the design is incredibly advanced. The power output would be sufficient to supply energy to an entire planet. The bridge was completely silent. Every crew member was staring at the display, trying to understand what they were seeing. "There is more, Captain," Nexra continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "I detected storage areas containing what the ship's computers label as antimatter torpedoes." The words hit the bridge like a physical blow. Antimatter was theoretical for most species. The Zephyrian Empire had scientists who believed it might be possible to create tiny amounts in laboratory conditions, but using it as a weapon was beyond imagination. "How much antimatter?" Veltar asked, though she was not sure she wanted to know. "Each torpedo contains approximately 100 grams. Engineer Thaxel made a choking sound from his station. 100 grams of antimatter would release energy equivalent to a 4-megaton nuclear explosion. The ship appeared to carry dozens of these weapons. "Captain," Navigator Crick said quietly, "a single one of those torpedoes could destroy our entire fleet." Veltar nodded slowly. She was beginning to understand that they had not discovered a primitive species. They had found something far more dangerous. "What about defensive systems?" she asked. Nexra changed the display again. The ship's hull was now covered in small red dots, hundreds of them scattered across every surface. Point defense systems, automated weapons designed to intercept incoming projectiles and missiles. The targeting computers appear to use advanced artificial intelligence. Response time would be measured in microseconds. Could our weapons penetrate these defenses? No, Captain. Our missiles would be destroyed long before reaching the ship. Our energy weapons lack the power to cause significant damage to the hull. The reality of the situation was becoming clear. This single derelict ship could probably destroy the entire Zephyrian reconnaissance fleet without taking serious damage, and they had been scanning it for hours, completely defenseless if it decided to wake up. "What about the crew?" Veltar asked. "What can you tell me about the species that built this?" Nexra hesitated. "The crew quarters suggest a bipedal species, approximately 2 meters tall. But, Captain, there are aspects of the ship's design that are troubling." "Show me." The display changed to show the ship's medical facilities. What Veltar saw there made her wish she had never been born. The medical bay was enormous, taking up nearly 10% of the ship's internal volume. It contained thousands of surgical units, each one designed for rapid trauma surgery. There were storage areas for artificial limbs, cybernetic implants, and medical supplies that could treat injuries she could barely imagine. "This species expects to take massive casualties in battle," Nexra explained. "The medical facilities are designed for battlefield surgery. The artificial limbs suggest they routinely replace body parts lost in combat. What else? The ship's database contains training materials. What I can translate suggests this species has been at war for most of its recorded history. They have combat manuals that describe tactics we have never encountered, methods of planetary bombardment that would make our military commanders sick." Veltar felt dizzy. "Are they currently at war?" "The records are unclear, but the ship's construction date appears to be recent. This is not an ancient vessel, Captain. This species is building ships like this right now." The implications were staggering. Somewhere out there was a civilization that built ships capable of destroying planets, ships that carried crews of 10,000 warriors, ships equipped with weapons that used antimatter as standard ammunition. "Captain," Communications Officer Yeldra spoke up from her station, "I have been monitoring the electromagnetic spectrum around the derelict. I'm detecting very faint signals." "What kind of signals?" "They appear to be automated system checks. The ship may not be as dead as we thought." Veltar felt panic rising in her throat. "Are you saying the ship is active?" "Some systems appear to be running on standby power. Basic maintenance routines, structural monitoring, that sort of thing. Could it detect our scanning?" Yeldra checked her instruments. "It is possible, Captain. We have been using active sensors for over 12 hours. If the ship has any monitoring systems active..." She did not need to finish the sentence. If the ship knew they were there, if it knew they had been scanning it, then they were already dead. They just did not know it yet. "Captain," Nexra said quietly, "there is one more thing you need to see." The display showed a section of the ship's database that had been partially decoded. It was a simple text document, but the words made Veltar's blood freeze. This appears to be a ship classification system. According to these records, this vessel is designated as a heavy cruiser in their fleet hierarchy. Meaning this is not their most powerful ship, Captain. This is a middle-range vessel. Their records mention something called dreadnoughts and battleships that are much larger and more heavily armed. Captain Veltar stared at the display, trying to process what she was seeing. This ship, with its planet-killing weapons and impossible defenses, was considered medium-sized by its builders. There were bigger ships out there, much bigger ships, and they had been scanning one of them for 12 hours like it was a helpless piece of space junk. Science Officer Nexra had not slept in 36 hours, but she could not stop analyzing the data. Each new discovery made the previous one seem less terrible by comparison. She had started this scan expecting to find primitive weapons and basic life support. Instead, she had found something that challenged everything the Zephyrian Empire believed about warfare and civilization. "Captain," she called out, her voice hoarse from exhaustion, "I need to show you the crew facilities." Captain Veltar approached her station with reluctance. Every new piece of information had been worse than the last. She was beginning to fear what they might learn next. The main display showed a detailed cross-section of the ship's living areas. At first glance, they looked normal enough. Sleeping quarters, common areas, food preparation facilities. But as Nexra highlighted different sections, the true nature of the ship became clear. "The crew quarters are designed for 12,000 individuals," Nexra began. "But look at this." She highlighted a series of chambers near the medical bay. Each chamber contained what looked like a coffin made of metal and glass. These appear to be suspended animation pods, but they are not designed for long-distance travel, Captain. They are designed for medical emergencies. "Explain." "The pods can keep a severely injured crew member alive indefinitely. The ship's medical computers can perform surgery, replace organs, even rebuild entire limbs while the patient remains unconscious. When the person wakes up, they can return to duty immediately." Veltar stared at the display. The implications were horrifying. This species did not just expect to take casualties in battle. They expected to take casualties so severe that normal medical treatment would not be enough. "What about the recreational facilities?" Nexra changed the display to show other sections of the ship. "There are training areas equipped with weapons simulators, combat practice rooms, something called a gymnasium, where the crew appears to maintain physical fitness. And Captain, look at this." The display showed a large chamber filled with strange equipment. After a moment, Veltar realized what she was looking at. "Is that a weapons manufacturing facility?" "Yes, Captain. The ship can produce its own ammunition during long missions. They can manufacture everything from simple bullets to antimatter torpedoes. The ship is completely self-sufficient for warfare." This was getting worse by the hour. Not only was this species incredibly advanced, but they were also incredibly practical. They had thought of everything needed to fight a war far from home for years at a time. "What about their food supplies?" "The ship has hydroponic gardens, Captain. They grow their own food. There are also storage areas containing what appears to be military rations designed to last for decades." "How long could the ship operate independently?" Nexra checked her calculations. "Based on the supplies and manufacturing capabilities, I estimate this single ship could operate for over 5 years without any external support. 5 years of independent operations. 12,000 crew members, weapons that could destroy planets. And this was just one ship, a medium-sized one according to their own classification system." "Captain," Navigation Officer Crix called out, "I have been analyzing the ship's computer navigation logs. What have you found?" "This ship has traveled to over 40 different star systems. The navigation records show patrol routes that cover thousands of light years. And Captain, some of these systems are not in our star charts." "Unknown systems?" "Yes, Captain. Either this species has explored regions of space we have never seen, or they come from much farther away than we thought." Veltar felt a chill run down her spine. The Zephyrian Empire considered itself to be the dominant power in this region of the galaxy. They had detailed maps of every star system within 500 light years, but this ship had been places they had never heard of. Is there any information about their home world? The navigation logs reference something called Earth and Sol system, but I cannot locate these in our charts. There are also references to colonies with names like New Tokyo, Mars Base, and Europa Station. Multiple colonies. This species had not just achieved interstellar travel. They had built an empire of their own, and if their ships were any indication, it was an empire built for war. "Captain," Nexra said quietly, "there is something else. I have been analyzing the ship's internal communication logs." "Show me." The display showed a series of text messages between crew members. Most were routine maintenance reports and duty assignments, but some of them revealed details about the crew that made Veltar's blood run cold. "These appear to be medical reports, Captain. Look at this crew member's file." The display showed a personnel record for someone called Lieutenant Sarah Chen. Her medical history included 3 major surgeries to repair combat injuries, replacement of her left arm with a cybernetic prosthetic, and psychological treatment for something called post-traumatic stress disorder. "This crew member has been wounded in battle multiple times," Nexra explained. "But she continues to serve. And Captain, she is not unusual. Most of the crew files show similar histories." Veltar read through more personnel files. Combat injuries, cybernetic replacements, psychological treatment. This was not a crew of soldiers. This was a crew of veterans, people who had survived so much combat that they considered severe injuries to be routine. "What kind of species does this to its people?" "I do not think they do it to their people, Captain. I think their people do it to themselves." "What do you mean?" Nexra highlighted another section of the personnel files. "Look at the service records. Most of these crew members volunteered for military service. They chose to be here. That is impossible. No one volunteers to be mutilated in combat." "Apparently this species does, Captain. And look at this. Many of them have served for decades. Some have been wounded multiple times and keep returning to duty. The more they learned about this species, the more alien they seemed. The Zephyrian Empire conquered other worlds because they were stronger and more advanced. But this species seemed to fight for the love of fighting itself." "Captain," Communications Officer Yeldra interrupted, "I am detecting changes in the electromagnetic signals from the derelict." "What kind of changes?" "The signals are getting stronger. More systems appear to be coming online." Veltar felt panic rising in her chest. "Are we activating something with our scans?" "It is possible, Captain. Our deep penetration sensors use powerful electromagnetic pulses. If the ship has automatic response systems—" She did not finish the sentence, but everyone on the bridge understood. They might have triggered some kind of automatic defense system. If this ship decided they were a threat, they would be dead before they could send a distress signal. "Should we withdraw, Captain?" asked Navigator Crix. Veltar considered the question. Part of her wanted to run immediately, but the information they were gathering was too important. The Zephyrian Empire needed to know about this species before they encountered them in battle. "Continue monitoring," she decided, "but prepare for emergency departure." "Captain," Nexra said, "there is one more thing. I found something in the ship's database that explains a lot." "Show me." The display showed what appeared to be a historical document. The translation was rough, but the meaning was clear enough. "This appears to be a timeline of their species' history, Captain. They have been fighting wars continuously for over 10,000 years. Not just small conflicts, massive global wars that killed millions of their people. 10,000 years of war? According to this document, they only achieved peace among themselves recently, within the last 100 years. Before that, their entire civilization was devoted to warfare." Veltar stared at the historical timeline. 10,000 years of continuous warfare had created a species that treated combat as a normal part of life. They had evolved not just technologically but psychologically. War was not something that happened to them. War was something they did. "Captain," Yeldra called out urgently, "major changes in the derelict's electromagnetic signature. Multiple systems are coming online." On the main screen, they could see lights beginning to flicker on inside the unknown ship. After hours of darkness, the vessel was starting to wake up, and they were still sitting right next to it, completely defenseless. The lights came on slowly at first. Small pinpricks of illumination appeared along the dark hull of the massive ship, like stars emerging at twilight. Then more lights joined them and more, until entire sections of the vessel were glowing with soft blue radiance. "Captain," Communications Officer Yeldra said, her voice tight with fear, "I am detecting massive power increases throughout the ship. Main engines are coming online. Weapon systems are—" "Oh no." On the main display screen, they could see the enormous turrets that housed the ship's primary weapons beginning to move. Slowly, with mechanical precision, they rotated toward the silent whisper. Evasive maneuvers, Captain Veltar ordered. But Navigator Crix was already shaking his head. Captain, we are too close. At this range, we cannot avoid their weapons. The bridge of the Silent Whisper fell silent except for the frantic beeping of various alarm systems. For the first time in 300 years of expansion, a Zephyrian crew faced an enemy that was clearly superior to them in every way. Incoming transmission, Yeldra announced. On speakers. The voice that filled the bridge was deep and calm, speaking in a language none of them recognized, but their translation computers worked quickly, converting the alien words into understandable speech. Unknown vessel. You are in violation of human colonial defense perimeter. State your intentions or prepare to be boarded. Human colonial defense. So this species called themselves humans, and they had colonial territories to defend. Veltar tried to keep her voice steady as she responded. This is Captain Veltar of the Zephyrian Empire reconnaissance vessel Silent Whisper. We detected your ship and believed it to be a derelict. We were conducting a rescue scan. There was a long pause before the human voice responded. When it did, there was a note of amusement that made Veltar's skin crawl. Rescue scan? Is that what you call 12 hours of deep penetration analysis of our weapon systems and crew facilities? They knew. The humans had been awake and aware the entire time, letting the Zephyrians scan their ship and learn all its secrets. But why? What kind of species would allow potential enemies to study their military capabilities? We meant no harm, Veltar tried to explain. We were simply... Captain Veltar, the human voice interrupted. My name is Commander Sarah Mitchell of the UES Indomitable. We need to talk. The main screen flickered and changed. Instead of showing the external view of the human ship, it now displayed the interior of what was obviously a military command bridge. And standing in the center of that bridge was a human being. Veltar had seen images of hundreds of different alien species, but she had never seen anything quite like this. The human was tall, perhaps 2 meters in height as the scans had suggested. But there was something about the way she stood, the way she looked directly into the camera that suggested a predator rather than prey. Commander Mitchell had short dark hair and pale skin. Her left arm was clearly artificial, made of metal and synthetic materials. Scars were visible on her face and neck, old wounds that had healed but left permanent marks. She wore a dark uniform with various insignia that probably indicated rank and achievements. Captain Veltar, Mitchell said, your scans were very thorough. You now know more about human military capabilities than most of our enemies ever learn. The question is, what do we do about that? Veltar struggled to find words. We are peaceful explorers. We meant no threat to your people. Mitchell smiled, and the expression was not reassuring. Peaceful explorers who happen to represent something called the Zephyrian Empire. Tell me, Captain, how many worlds does your empire control? The question was asked casually, but Veltar sensed danger in it. The empire spans 47 worlds. Conquered or colonized? Veltar did not want to answer that question, but she could see no way to avoid it. Conquered, I see. And how did these 47 species react to being conquered by peaceful explorers? Some resisted initially, but they learned to accept imperial rule. How many casualties did you take in these conquests? Veltar thought about the question. In 300 years of expansion, the Zephyrian Empire had lost perhaps 1,000 soldiers total. Most species surrendered quickly when they realized how outmatched they were. Very few casualties, she admitted. And how many casualties did the conquered species take? That was a different question entirely. The Empire did not keep detailed records of alien casualties, but Veltar estimated that millions had died resisting imperial expansion over the centuries. More, she said quietly. Commander Mitchell nodded. I thought so. Captain, let me explain something about humans that your scans might not have revealed. We have a saying, the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. I do not understand. It means that when we encounter bullies, we fight them. When we find conquerors who prey on weaker species, we stop them. When we discover empires built on the suffering of others, we tear them down. The words hit Veltar like a physical blow. Mitchell was not just threatening her ship or her crew. She was threatening the entire Zephyrian Empire. You cannot be serious. One ship against an entire empire? Mitchell's smile widened. Captain, look at your scan results again. Look at what you found on this one middle-sized human warship. Do you really think we only built one of them? The truth hit Veltar like a meteor strike. If this was a standard heavy cruiser, if humans had been building ships like this for years, then there had to be dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. How many ships do you have? She whispered. That would be telling, wouldn't it? But I can share some general information. The human colonial defense force currently operates in 43 star systems. We maintain patrol routes covering approximately 15,000 cubic light years. And, Captain, we have been looking for something to do since we achieved peace among ourselves. 43 star systems. The Zephyrian Empire controlled 47 worlds, but they were scattered across less than 1,000 cubic light years. The humans controlled a territory 15 times larger, and they had the military power to defend it. What do you want? Veltar asked. An excellent question. What I want personally is to test our weapons against your ship and see how long you last. It has been very boring out here on patrol duty, and your empire sounds like exactly the kind of challenge we have been hoping for. You cannot attack us. We have done nothing wrong. You have conquered 47 worlds, Captain. You represent a military force that preys on weaker species. By human standards, that makes you legitimate targets. Mitchell paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was softer but somehow more threatening. However, I am not authorized to start an interstellar war without proper clearance. So I am going to let you go, Captain. You are going to return to your empire and deliver a message. What message? Tell your leaders that humans have discovered the Zephyrian Empire. Tell them that we know about your conquest of 47 worlds. Tell them that we consider such conquests to be acts of evil that must be stopped. And then you prepare for war, Captain. Because we are coming. The transmission ended, leaving the Zephyrian bridge in stunned silence. On the main screen, they could see the human ship's weapon systems tracking their movement with mechanical precision. Captain, Navigator Crick said quietly, we should leave now. Veltar nodded, but she could not take her eyes off the human warship. In 12 hours, everything she had believed about the galaxy had changed. The Zephyrian Empire was no longer the dominant power. They were about to become prey. Take us home, she whispered. Maximum speed. As the silent whisper began to move away from the human vessel, Captain Veltar realized that she had just witnessed the beginning of the end of the Zephyrian Empire. And the worst part was that the humans seemed to be looking forward to it. The journey back to Zephyrian space took 6 days, and Captain Veltar did not sleep for any of them. She spent the time reviewing the scan data over and over, hoping she had made some mistake, hoping the humans were not as dangerous as they appeared to be. But every analysis only confirmed her worst fears. Science Officer Nexra had compiled a complete report on human military capabilities, and reading it was like staring into the abyss. The Indomitable was not just superior to Zephyrian ships, it was superior by such a wide margin that calling it a fight would be generous. It would be more like watching children play with nuclear weapons. Captain, Navigator Crick said as they approached the Imperial border, I have been thinking about what Commander Mitchell said. About humans controlling 43 star systems. What about it? If each system has even one ship like the Indomitable, they could destroy our entire fleet without taking significant casualties. Veltar nodded grimly. She had reached the same conclusion. The Zephyrian Empire had approximately 200 military vessels of all sizes. The humans probably had more firepower in a single ship than the Empire had in its entire navy. Captain, Communications Officer Yeldra interrupted. We are receiving a priority transmission from Imperial Command. Put it through. The face of Admiral Zekthul appeared on the main screen. He was one of the most senior commanders in the Imperial Navy, a veteran of dozens of successful conquests. But he looked worried. Captain Veltar, you are overdue for your scheduled report. What is your status? Admiral, I need to speak with you immediately, in person. What I have discovered changes everything. Zekthul's expression grew more serious. Captain, you are scaring me. What have you found? A species that makes us look like children playing with toys, Admiral. They call themselves humans, and they are going to destroy our empire unless we do something immediately. That is impossible. No species in this region of space has that kind of power. Admiral, they have weapons that use antimatter. Their armor can withstand direct hits from stellar-class energy weapons. A single human ship carries more firepower than our entire fleet. Zekthul was quiet for a long moment. Captain, return to Imperial headquarters immediately. Bring all your scan data. I will convene the War Council. The transmission ended and Veltar ordered maximum speed to the Imperial capital world. As they traveled, she continued studying the human data, trying to find some weakness they could exploit. But the more she learned, the more hopeless their situation appeared. 2 days later, the Silent Whisper arrived at Zephyros Prime, the capital world of the Zephyrian Empire. Veltar had never been so unhappy to see home. The Imperial War Council met in the Grand Chamber, a massive room carved from black stone that had witnessed the planning of dozens of successful military campaigns. But today, the atmosphere was different. Today, they were not planning a conquest. They were trying to figure out how to avoid extinction. Admiral Zekthul sat at the head of the curved table, surrounded by the Empire's most senior military commanders. Captain Veltar stood at the center of the chamber, presenting her findings to the assembled leadership. The human vessel we encountered was classified as a heavy cruiser, she explained, which means it is a medium-sized ship in their fleet hierarchy. They have larger and more powerful vessels. General Mordek, the Empire's top strategic planner, looked skeptical. Captain, you are asking us to believe that a single alien ship could destroy our entire navy. Not just our navy, General. Our civilization. She activated the holographic display and showed the assembly a three-dimensional image of the Indomitable. The assembled commanders studied the ship's design, and she watched their expressions change from skepticism to concern to outright fear. The ship's antimatter torpedoes have a yield equivalent to 4 megatons each, Veltar continued. They carry dozens of these weapons. A single torpedo could destroy any city on Zephyros Prime. What about our planetary defense systems? Asked Admiral Yexra. Useless. Their point defense systems would intercept our missiles before they could reach the ship. Our energy weapons lack the power to penetrate their armor. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The Zephyrian Empire had built their power on superior technology and military might, but now they had encountered a species that made them look primitive. How many of these ships do they have? Admiral Zekthul asked quietly. Unknown, Admiral. But they claim to control 43 star systems. Even if they only have 1 ship per system, that would be enough to destroy us completely. General Mordek leaned forward. What do they want? They consider our empire to be evil, General. They view our conquests as crimes that must be stopped. They are preparing for war. Then we surrender, Admiral Yexra said immediately. If we cannot win, we negotiate. I do not think they are interested in negotiation, Veltar replied. Commander Mitchell seemed to be looking forward to the conflict. Looking forward to it? Admiral, humans have been fighting wars for 10,000 years. Combat is not something that happens to them. It is something they do. They enjoy it. The War Council spent the next 12 hours reviewing every piece of data from the human encounter. They analyzed the ship's capabilities, studied the crew profiles, and tried to develop some kind of strategy that might give them a chance of survival. But every analysis led to the same conclusion. The Zephyrian Empire was doomed. We could try diplomatic contact, suggested General Mordek. Offer to release some of our conquered worlds in exchange for peace. They want us to release all of them, Veltar replied. And I do not think they trust us to keep our promises. What about forming an alliance with other species in the region? Admiral, we have conquered most of the other species in the region. The ones we have not conquered are too primitive to be useful allies. Admiral Zekthul stood up slowly, his face showing the weight of command. Captain Veltar, in your professional opinion, what should we do? Veltar had been dreading this question, but she had prepared an answer. Admiral, we have 2 choices. We can fight a war we cannot win and watch our civilization be destroyed, or we can abandon our empire, evacuate our population to distant systems and hope the humans do not follow us. Abandon the empire? Abandon 3 centuries of expansion and conquest? Admiral, I met Commander Mitchell. I saw her ship. I studied their capabilities. We are not facing an enemy we can defeat. We are facing an enemy that views war as entertainment. The chamber erupted in angry voices as the assembled commanders argued about their options. Some wanted to fight, believing that Zephyrian courage could overcome human technology. Others wanted to negotiate, hoping that some compromise could be reached. A few agreed with Veltar that evacuation was their only hope. But as the hours passed and the arguments continued, one thing became clear. The golden age of the Zephyrian Empire was over. 3 days later, long-range sensors detected the first human ships entering Zephyrian space. They were not scouts or reconnaissance vessels. They were the massive dreadnoughts and battleships that made the Indomitable look small by comparison. Captain Veltar stood on the observation deck of the evacuation ship Final Hope, watching Zephyros Prime shrink behind them. The planet that had been the center of their empire for 300 years was now just another light in the darkness. "Captain," said Navigator Crix, "I have been monitoring human communications. What are they saying?" The fleet commander sent a message to his superiors. He said, and I quote, "Finally found something interesting out here. This should be fun." Veltar closed her eyes and tried not to think about the 47 worlds that were about to discover what it meant to face humanity in battle. The Zephyrian Empire had conquered those worlds easily, treating their populations as subjects to be ruled rather than people to be respected. Now those populations would be free, and the Zephyrians would learn what it felt like to be the conquered rather than the conquerors. Behind them, the human fleet moved deeper into Imperial space, and Captain Veltar knew that the galaxy would never be the same.